So now we're going to dive into the architecture of the tables for granting access. And to be honest, for our purposes, it's much easier than you might think. Just watch out for some of the exact terminology. So for each record, Salesforce calculates each user's access. And broadly speaking, there are 3 levels to the architecture. There's the object record tables, the object sharing tables, and the group maintenance tables. First up, object record tables. So really simply, which user or queue owns the record? It's nothing to do with sharing, just ownership. It's the ID of the record in one column and the ID of the owner in the other. So next up, we have object sharing tables. And they store the explicit and implicit grants. So there's a table for each object in your org. So for accounts, it's account share. And for new custom object, it's new custom object __ share. Each row in an object share table contains fields that record the following: the ID of the record being shared, the ID of the user or group being granted access to the record, and the level of access, so it could be read-only or read-write, being granted to the user or group, and the reason the access is being granted. And by the way, when we say group here, I don't mean public group. It could be a queue or a role or a territory, and we'll go through this in a little bit later. So first thing to note here is when we share with a group, we are only creating one single sharing record. So the platform will cross-reference with the group maintenance tables, which we'll discuss in a moment, to determine access to a particular record. So the level of access is there as we expect, but we also see a reason for access. And this could be an implicit grant, which we remember are if you see an opportunity case or contact, you have at least access to the account. And if you see a parent account, you can see all the children account. Implicit grants will definitely feature as part of a question somewhere in the exam. And when we think about it, there are conditions where an object doesn't need and won't even have an object sharing table at all. So if it's on the detail side of a master detail, if it's org-wide defaults or public read-write for both internal and external users, and then we have a couple of other exceptions as well. So files and activities being the big one. They have different mechanisms. So we'll come back to files in episode 6 and we'll cover activities in just a moment. And these are of 2 types. So the first up is inherited grants. So it's sharing up to the role or territory hierarchy. And also there's user-defined groups. And that's basically just public groups and queues. So our full list is public groups, queues, role and subordinates, role and internal subordinates, territory and subordinates. It's important to note here that a couple of those groups have subordinates involved, so there's clearly hierarchy information in there, and we'll come back to that in the next episode. So we mentioned just a few moments ago that activities do not have an object sharing table at all, so we'll get to those in just